Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to video game news. Today is Wednesday, February 25th, 2026. Starting just about the right time, we'll do a little bit of warm-up, scrolling down the SteamDB 24-hour peak concurrent chart to start with, and then we'll jump into the video game news. It is a rarity, frankly, for me to be somewhat on time. And yeah, people still playing Eugenics and quite a bit, and that is a game to watch. But weirdly, I also think that it is just a game that will not get its rightful applauses when we get to the end of the year and Game of the Year awards. And perhaps that was even partially intentional in its release schedule, whereas had this game come out closer to November or October, people might very well have called it Game of the Year. Now it's an uphill battle, certainly, to have mainstream video game journalists, who, let's face it, are the only people that vote in these game awards, and that's basically all of the game awards that people know of, would have to really play eugenics and stick with it. But the problem with that idea is that mainstream video game journalists don't stick to games. It just can't actually happen because they have to move on to the next game. So yeah, it almost certainly is going to be the secret game of the year winner in the hearts of a lot of gamers, though. Of course, it is way too early to be talking about Game of the Year, and seems like everything else is pretty much the same. So, I got everything done yesterday that I needed to get done. I went out to my car, saw that the window was dirty and dusty, tried to wash the windows, had no windshield washing fluid, dropped off some Amazon.com returns where I only had a couple more days to return those before I would have run out of my window of when you can return things, which they give you basically a month, and just ain't gotten around to it. And most importantly, I mailed off my taxes, and now we wait. The hope there is that it just gets processed and nobody cares about it, but always a little bit of fear of being audited, particularly in my case where this 2025 year in particular was not particularly normal. And so the goal, almost certainly the next year, is to report a lot more income and have a lot more income in general, and that way this 2025 just looks like an off year. There is weirdness certainly around how I'm doing things, as far as I need to be better about printing out receipts and collecting and maintaining receipts. The thing that's weird about receipts in particular is it doesn't really help your average person who's just filing, who's just working a job for somebody else. But it might help somebody who's running their own business. Let's look at the 7-day gain here. But even then, having like a business ledger and going through a lot of other extra work and just creating paperwork specifically to just fight back on any kind of audit becomes a bigger deal. And ironically, it creates this system that if you're working for yourself, you basically need to bill yourself, and that still probably isn't going to help you too much to create receipts where you're billing yourself, having different accounts. What they really want you to do, I suspect, is they want you to pay someone else to do something. So if you can do plumbing yourself and fix a toilet, like that writing that off as far as a repair, if you're a landlord or a building manager or something, is more dangerous than just paying a plumber to generate a receipt, charge you a lot more to do it. And that's where the massive amounts of inefficiencies, I think, start to show up. And it's just every level, there's more and more levels of inefficiencies as far as being frugal, being good with money, that they really don't want. And I guess inherently the governments in general don't want efficiency to the max, even though they claim they do. They want to be able to spread money around and overpay for things to different tiers. Otherwise, governments would become more like socialist or communist, and they would regulate how much people could actually be paid for repairing a toilet instead of a caveat emptorum, buyer beware, let the market decide approach. What is that called? It's actually called laissez-faire, the hands-off approach, which is a small pinhole view of just like the problems that capitalism and money really creates. Whereas if we were all, say, in the Federation or even in the Borg, I would say the Borg, to use a Star Trek reference better, they would be doing everything as efficiently as possible, always. That's the whole point of the Borg. And their level of efficiency led them to take over an entire quadrant. And apparently in some of the newer Star Treks, they straight up were antagonized into coming into the Alpha Quadrant, where the humans and the Federation were, by the not the Romulans, but the their cousins, the Vulcans, I think. But also it is a case that basically the first episode, I think, of Star Trek The Next Generation, Q, the godlike creature, brought the Borg, a single Borg cube, way closer to the Alpha Quadrant than any of the other cubes, introducing the Borg for the first time and showing humanity that if they keep traveling further and further, there's going to be increasing dangers. Of course, that also gets retconned in the idea that there were subspace conduits that the Borgs have that was introduced in Voyager, and I'm talking way too much about Star Trek here, but yeah, they apparently had entire networks of subspace conduits that would spit out entire Borg cubes very close to Earth, where they could move much faster than having to warp. But maybe those weren't built at that time. Anyways, that's way too much talking about Star Trek for no real reason. Beyond getting the little side things done, and starting some other side things, as far as side projects, cleaning and decluttering still trying to happen. I have been playing Resident Evil 2 Remastered, and I am at a point where there is a monster, and I'm trying to do this without spoiling anything, that is chasing you, and assumedly this monster cannot be killed, particularly since I'm playing the game on normal and I have spent more time low on bullets than I have high on bullets. So trying to take on this monster seems ridiculous. Even the fact that I got a grenade at one point didn't really act as a game changer, because grenades seem like they're not anything but, hand grenades seem to be nothing but stronger versions of hand knives that you have to be attacked first before you can shove them in the mouth of a zombie. The map is not particularly big from what I've seen of Resident Evil 2, so and it definitely seems like they designed the map in such a way so this monster can chase you, but not chase you down a one-way hallway. So you will have a different way to go. But yeah, it really does seem fairly viable that if you play the game really well multiple times over, you could run through the game on normal mode or hardcore mode and beat it under 3 hours and 30 minutes. But I don't think I'm going to do that. I think I'm just going to shove the money over to pay for the DLC that unlocks all the unlocks. And even at that, it is not 100% guaranteed that I want to play all 4 scenarios, particularly if the 4 scenarios really are just the exact same game with a different character and a different loadout to do the exact same thing over and over again. And it is worth pointing out that the Resident Evil 2 remake is a remake of a very old game, so the idea that there would be a lot of people that remembered how they played Resident Evil 2 20 years ago, probably closer to 30 years ago, and that they would know how to just rush through everything is pretty unbelievable. So I imagine my experience of playing it the first time is very similar in a lot of ways to the experience of people who have played the original Resident Evil 2. But it is better than like the remasters of Resident Evil 0 and Resident Evil 1. That it doesn't have the tanky controls. I can actually play it. The only thing is just being careful to save so I don't lose 20 to 40 minutes of progress if I get killed, which is going to start happening here and there. Some of the achievements and unlocks are kind of crazy as far as never using any healing potions or anything like that. I don't know how you do that without already having like an infinite rocket launcher in your inventory. I watched I want to call it a sequel movie, the newest Candyman movie. I wasn't probably paying as much attention as it deserved. I still probably have a real problem of not looking at the screen. I think some of that is my eyesight and just needing to wear my glasses. I think some of it is also attention span, just picking up my phone and being distracted. And then some of it definitely is having to take a break in the middle of the movie. But there is a lot of good aspects, I think, in that new Candyman. You could rightfully, I think, criticize it for not being so much a horror movie at all, and it's taken a horror series, which you might try and claim was a next generation black exploitation movie, but I don't really think you would describe it that way. But yeah, the new Candyman takes the idea of the original Candyman stories and movies as being something that was known about and exists in that world, but then turns it into much more of a impactful story and mention about how Africans in that area, or people of African descent in that area, are treated, particularly by the police, and just living in the projects and things like that. So I felt like it was a very good, impactful art piece, the new Candyman, and I would have questioned if they ever made a sequel. I'd like to see a sequel, but it would be very hard, because I think the message that it was trying to evoke throughout the entire movie, which I think it did a good job of, has been delivered. And yeah, you would simply in a sequel be saying the same thing over and over again. Yeah, and it is a fairly surface level message. But yeah, as an actual horror movie, most of the kills are not shown on screen. It seemed like, in the sense that you would just see blood and things like that happen after the fact. But yeah, I did like it. I think I'll probably go back and try and watch the original Candyman movies just to see how they hold up in retrospect to that. But yeah, there is definitely some fun to watch that movie. Also, I think I talked about it in the last stream, but I watched a movie about an autistic kid called Come Play that was a horror movie. I think that was pretty good too. So I've run into a couple of good horror movies, and perhaps that is in part because I'm actually sitting down and watching movies instead of just trying to watch TV series from like the Sci-Fi Channel in contrast, or something I've already seen. Of course, sitting down and watching a movie is spending more time in a row doing nothing else, and I really shouldn't have and don't have the free time to actually do that. One thing after watching Candyman is I wish there was better tellings and more tellings of the richly diverse African folk tales. Anasazi the spider is the only character I can even really name, because most of them are more oral traditions and haven't been written down, and of the few that have been written down, they haven't really been promoted that much. And even if they have been made, they may very well have been twisted into something very far from their original forms. See, even the concept of saying African folktales really means very little, because what is happening, like South Africa folktales versus Egypt folktales versus Northwest Africa folktales, or just each of those regions and tribes would have been severely different, and the stories would not have likely even crossed over. And when you say African folktales, you typically should include Egyptian things and Arabian stories, but that does, to a United States person, feel disconnected from what you're really thinking about. You're thinking about people with dark colored skin. Folk tales. But yeah. In a lot of ways, I guess cultures all over the world may be somewhat failing to grow. Or it may just be the case that cultures don't grow very much in one person's lifetime, because we really don't have a lot of iconic stories coming out of like the UK, other than maybe Harry Potter. And that is kind of silly to think that maybe 1,000 years from now there will be a Lord of the Rings and a Harry Potter cultural story attributed to this era, and that might be it. Even when you think of like the United States, John Henry and Johnny Appleseed and some of those folk tales, To Kill a Mockingbird, like a lot of these stories aren't guaranteed to really make it 100 years, or even 1,000 years in the future, they may be forgotten about. And yeah, Star Wars and Star Trek might be talked about, but might not. But even in that, Star Wars and Star Trek is 30 years old. I do have the feeling like creativity is slowing down amongst the main broadcast forms of media, and YouTube is definitely not picking up on that. Yeah, YouTube's its own weird thing. I actually spent several minutes looking at another YouTuber's channel, just kind of seeing where they came from and where they are now. And yeah, it is an interesting example of their channel, of them just throwing spaghetti at the wall and trying every single trend and every single meme and trying to have as many famous people's names in the title as possible. And it is certainly a common story, I think, that their channel is not that successful. And yeah, it's really just a matter of luckiness. As far as the algorithm is this crazy random number generator that decides whether it wants to push something or not. And I can speak more specifically to my last stream. Like, I literally know somebody was watching my stream when I ended it, but the algorithm did not mention and validate that one view for over an hour after the end of the stream. So as far as the algorithm was concerned, nobody watched that stream at all. Thus, it did not promote that stream to anyone else. Thus, it did not get any views. And so often that happens with pre-recorded footage, so often that happens with live streams. Live streams are a little bit better on YouTube, and it's just not your fault. I mean, what's that movie? It's not your fault, man. It's not your fault. It really is the case for YouTube content creators. Like, you definitely should be taking ownership of your actions and what you're creating on YouTube, certainly, and everyone can improve, certainly, but there is just a high level of randomness, and these days it feels pretty bad because a lot of views, I imagine, are being pushed to YouTube Shorts, and just more and more vapid garbage content creators that are newer. But yeah, I've noticed that notifications are not popping up, it feels like, as consistently as I would like them to. It is perhaps also helpful if I went back and thought about time slots again, as far as when pre-recorded footage and pre-recorded videos came out on my channel. But yeah, the only thing I can really say about the other channel compared to my channel is roughly similar levels of success between the two channels, and their channel started, by my definition, my personal opinion, selling out on video one. Like, they were chasing trends and not really sticking to any one thought or concept at all. And it definitely felt like they were trying to be successful before they had anything to say, and I'm not sure this channel ever has had anything to say as far as deep, insightful things. So yeah, I'm glad that for the most part I have not sold out on my channel. Like, there was some silliness and stupidness early in my channel with the titles, but it definitely wasn't just clickbait stuff. And maybe here and there I've tried some clickbait stuff and it hasn't really worked, and it just felt sleazy. And so I am much happier with what I've done with my channel. Plus, my channel has allowed me to actually play games and show footage of me playing the games and talking about the games in the long plays, the pre-recorded footage, versus trying to do something like a podcast or a recap thing. The other channel, in one of their examples of trying to sell out, tried to do like top 10, top 5 list for a brief second there, and that too did not work. And these are all things that people will suggest as far as trend chasing, and as far as people on YouTube saying this is how you get successful on YouTube. I am probably the most honest person to say there's just no guaranteed way to be successful on YouTube. Have money, pay for views, that's probably it. Cheat, and be willing to have your channel deleted if you do cheat. Buy somebody else's channel and see if you can convert one audience to another, which almost never works. Have a massive amount of friends, which you really would need massive amounts of friends, 500 to several thousand, who are willing to watch all your videos, which is basically just paying for views in the same way. Know somebody that works at YouTube, somebody internally that actually is high enough up to tell you some secret that only they would know. Most of the people at YouTube don't know how the algorithm works at all. Basically, being friendly with the CEO of YouTube is your best bet, as they'll push and promote you in some way. Probably wouldn't be a terrible idea to follow like celebrities and CEOs on things like Twitter still. That might get you a few more random bots. Probably not real people. But yeah, the best suggestion I can say for YouTube is work a real job. Use YouTube as where you put things that you are creatively inspired to create. But, you know, find one of those real jobs. I know they're harder and harder to find out in the real world. Being a burger flipper, you'll make way more money and live a much more balanced life than trying to be a YouTuber. And I know kids in particular don't want to hear that by any means, but that is kind of it. And particularly right now, it looks like learning a trade is a particularly good idea as far as being like an HVAC service technician or something like that. And yeah, that's always been kind of the case as a tradesman, serviceman type job, being a plumber, being an air conditioner repairman, being somebody that fixes something that absolutely has to be fixed when it's broken and the price doesn't matter, is a great trade to potentially get into, compared to IT, where IT looked like it was going to be a great trade to get into, particularly when I was a kid, and everybody thought that there were going to be tons of IT jobs, and then they realized that IT uniquely are jobs that can be outsourced overseas to India and even cheaper countries than India nowadays, and companies can straight up just ignore IT problems and not care about it. They notoriously just don't run backups and don't care if passwords leak or people's information leaks. It's just cheaper to settle in a lawsuit than it is to have good data protection policies. Back to video game warm-up. I'm still playing Pokemon TCG Pocket. I think we're, again, still just working our way to the next expansion. Same is true for Memento Mori, which I'm still playing. I imagine maybe Monday or the first of the month, whichever happens first, will be the next big expansion for both of them. I have been having trouble as far as ordering groceries, getting certain kind of chicken strips I liked, and I was talking to someone about it, and they told me, oh, a bunch of chicken factories in the United States have been shut down, so I guess that explains that, which that sucks. Although in fairness, I probably shouldn't be eating chicken strips or chicken in general as much as I have in the past, just because of, in the United States at least, they're pumped full of hormones, and because of that, who knows what's that what that is doing to the human body as it builds up. But yeah, I guess I'm me. Go back to eating more beans for protein. Yeah, and I'm coughing a little bit here. Probably because I did something a little too physical yesterday, although I don't know what specifically it was. Brown Dust 2, which came to Steam censored and then didn't censor itself after the pushback. It's not doing particularly good this month, financially. I do have the twinge to want to work on programming, like making more of the YouTube shorts. I haven't done that in months. I probably, first and foremost, should just schedule more videos and have more videos coming out. A push there alone could be very helpful. Yeah, I am probably close to 5 hours into Resident Evil 2 Remake, even though it says 27.3 hours running. But looking at the achievements and everything, I question how many of these I'm really going to be able to get. If we just scroll down to some of the hardest ones, like read all the files, 6% is not too bad. Clear the game without opening the item box is kind of impossible unless you're going to play it on the easiest mode. Then they have you just destroying these Mr. Raccoons. Here's one. Take less than 14,000 steps. I looked at this, and I've already taken 15,000 steps in my game. Complete the game without using a recovery item. Complete the game on hardcore game mode. Yeah. And I didn't even know about this DLC stuff, to Go Survivors and Another Survivor. That's all stuff that I imagine unlocks after you beat it once on either Leon or Claire's playthrough. Yep. Yeah, it would make a lot of sense to start scheduling videos and make sure I have videos scheduled, and maybe try to have more videos come out overall. I still don't think this is out yet. I think we have maybe one more day. But yeah, I also would like to work on some more of the Violent Monkey scripts I was writing to get more of this to stop working based on UI Vision as a plugin. A lot of the projects that I should work on next are going to be related to spring happening, just seasonal things like that. I'm trying to set up a motion detector sprinkler head to spray a bunch of cats and a possum in my backyard to see if I can just convince them to stop living here. And immediately as I started to assemble it and think about it, I've got an issue in that it is also going to spray my lawnmower guy as soon as I set it up, unless I set it up in such a way that it is connected to my sprinkler system, which then I'd have to dedicate an entire channel on my sprinkler system to be on. I guess that is the smartest way to really do it. So yeah, like wire it up and dedicate it so it is on when I want it to be on and off when the lawnmower guy is there, and that my sprinkler system is a do-it-yourself botch job, for lack of a better term, so it's not how you normally would set something up like this by any means. But I mean, it kind of makes sense to set it up that way, to have these Sentry water squirters. The other thought, though, is to just live with it as is and hope that eventually the cats and the possum go away and don't come back. Yeah. And you know what? I hadn't thought of this, but I could probably do it already without my motion sensor Sentry sprinkler, because I put in a smart bird feeder, and the bird feeder sees the cats in the backyard. So I literally could just tell the smart bird feeder to turn on the sprinkler valves for a minute or so whenever it sees movement. That's a thought. Well, certainly is a thought to think about. Yeah. If that does work, then increasingly I'm just going to have one more thing that I didn't really need to buy. Of course, I didn't at the time when I got the sprinkler Sentry devices. Didn't know I was going to get a smart bird feeder that could detect motion. And that is part of the problem with the Tuya smart device system, is that you really just don't know how the programming and the setup is going to work until you have the device in hand and set up. As far as you just don't know what functions and features you can really engage with and use, and you don't know how well it's going to work or how long it's going to work. So Under the Island looked very attractive to me as a game, and we can see now it's been out for basically 9 days, and it is 94% of 170 user reviews. It looks like Zelda with a girl with a hockey stick. And it looks very, very much like Zelda. And that's really all I think a lot of people want, is a Game Boy Link's Awakening type game on PC for this type of game. And it's crazy how you just are not really satisfied being a PC gamer in that aspect. Yeah, this game comes out on the 26th. They are very much trying to stop people from watching leaks and encouraging people not to spoil it. In a lot of ways, though, you look at Resident Evil Requiem, and this starting area, if this is the starting area, looks so much like Resident Evil 2, like Resident Evil 1, like Resident Evil 0. Just that you have this big starting area with multiple doors. And I think that is kind of the problem with Resident Evil games in general, is that a lot of times they have just stayed very close to the pattern that they've done before, and Resident Evil 4 is perhaps one of the few examples of breaking away from that pattern. You aren't in a mansion. Your starting area is a little village in Resident Evil 4, and you don't really spend that much time in the village. You go to a lot of different locations, and you don't just cross back over the same central paths in X-shaped walking patterns. Visually, the Resident Evil 2 remake doesn't look much different from this. I will say, with my current hardware, my old computer, ray tracing enabled, there's a lot of things in Resident Evil 2 remake that have a kind of artificial, rainy, glossy feel to it when they are out in the rain, which is fairly rare. And I still just question whether ray tracing actually matters at all. It all looks pretty good, but it still feels like in the Resident Evil 2 remake that it's probably one generation behind of the level of hyper-realistic graphics But even when you look at this game, which we should probably look at a trailer just to get a great view of it, there's just never going to really be a level here where the graphics are going to look that much better. You look at the color palettes, you look at the skin tones, and this looks like a CGI movie. It doesn't look like somebody is trying to do some kind of AI generated flim flam, for lack of a better term, to make it seem like a real human. And it really does just feel like you can't get there from here. That you are going to either have 3D modelers and 3D animators making textures, or you are going to have film capturing humans, and the uncanny valley seems to be a self-reinforcing gap between those two, and that you just cannot ever cross over. And I'm not sure it even would improve the aspects of that. There's an example of it, just like really glossy. I assume the RE engine took a lot of inspiration from the Unreal Engine, certainly, but it seems pretty capable for making these types of games, so it's working well. But yeah, there's a question certainly in my mind as far as, would it be better if Resident Evil games were more realistic? And I kind of don't think it would. The other pattern that you run into fairly often in Resident Evil games is that by the second playthrough, you are so overpowered, you are playing an action game and you are just shooting zombies like they are piñatas for fun. You're not actually engaging with the fear aspects. One thing I will say about the Resident Evil 2 remake that I'm playing right now, it is very interesting how it splits the horror sections and the action sections very often. So you'll go through one door and there will be a room with the lights off, and then Leon, young Leon, not old Leon in this video, will pull out his camera and not his camera, his flashlight, and you'll be kind of in this horror section where you're just trying to avoid conflicts. And for the most part, you should probably be avoiding conflicts on your first playthrough altogether. If you can run past a zombie, run past them. But then you get into a well-lit room, and the general thought is that is more of a section where you are supposed to be shooting people. Also, in the Resident Evil 2 remake, you don't have a stomp and you don't have like a scissor kick ability. So if you knock a zombie down on the ground, all you can do is aim your gun at their head and shoot them, it seems, at least on the first playthrough. You don't have an ability to press any real buttons to action-wise push a zombie off of you. You just have to mash buttons to physically slowly push a zombie off of you. It is also interesting, I realize, that we've never seen anybody in any of the Resident Evil games pull out a can of hairspray and a lighter and just start people on fire. Yeah, obviously in games you get flamethrowers at some point in some of the games, but flame would almost certainly deal with slow moving or even fast moving zombies pretty quickly and pretty easily. Yep. We still don't have any Steam Decks in stock, which I have a growing concern as far as game developers now not being able to access a Steam Deck to even test out their games, and that's a problem, certainly. One would hope that most game developers had bought a Steam Deck, but now they're potentially going to have to try and borrow or buy them used just to develop their game and make sure it runs on the Steam Deck. Although maybe it doesn't matter as long as Steam Decks are out of stock, and maybe it doesn't matter in general as long as Steam machines are still potentially coming out. If it was the case that you could get a Steam machine right now and you were a developer, but it was, say, $2,000 or more to get a Steam machine, that's still not that crazy for a mid-tier game developer to say, I'll just buy a Steam machine and develop my game to say it works on Steam machines. I haven't tested it on the Steam Deck though. But you still are going to get kind of a different experience on a Steam Deck than a Steam machine just because of the screens and the touchpads being in different positions. But that is a great example, certainly, of how the growth, which has been very good around the Steam Deck, really just comes to a screeching halt as soon as it's not available for purchase. That's pretty much true for any product. Yeah. We can still see people that do have Steam Decks are playing about the same games, but bringing in some new games here and there. Yeah. And this chart in particular, I think, really just goes to show where if you just had a Steam Deck, you're still doing pretty good. Yeah, I don't know of a single game that has come out since the past year or so that just absolutely felt like it should be played, but runs poorly or doesn't run well, doesn't run at all on a Steam Deck. I guess we're done talking about the Fallout Prime TV series until they have a new season. Alright, and that's going to bring us to Video Games Chronicles. We're going to do the same thing we did the last time, and I may just keep testing this until they take off this advertisement, because I'm just going to keep forgetting it over and over again as far as tickets sell on sale. So if anything, this may just be a great experiment as far as how to speed up these streams. Anyways, March's PlayStation Plus Essential Monthly Games have been confirmed. We'll see that probably from Gamatsu as far as what those games are. So I'm willing to take a risk there. Assassin's Creed Hexy director Clint Hocking has left Ubisoft as part of the franchise upheaval. I don't even recognize what Hexy is. There's a video where you can see WWE 2K26 My Faction and the Island modes in action, if you're interested. We have a quote here: "We missed the mark. Discord is delaying its global age verification until it's improved the process." Also, I believe they claim they have separated from one of the questionable companies that they were working with. Although, I think it was a Peter Thiel company that is still being used by Reddit and plenty of other services. Here we have a quote: "We need to draw lines on what we won't do," end quote. Xbox isn't enforcing the use of AI, says the new gaming CEO, which it's nice for her to at least say that, since she just was the CEO of AI, the AI division in Microsoft, but it's questionable. Like, you can very easily say, we're not forcing anybody to use AI, and then put a lot of talk and a lot of pressure on people to use AI. Yeah, I don't know why you would put this person in charge when you knew that was just going to be the conversation going on for months, if not years, around her. Unless perhaps they wanted the conversation to be talking about how they won't use AI over something else, which might be the case. She very possibly is just being brought in as some kind of interim person to take some blame, or to do a whole bunch more layoffs. it is possible that nobody wanted the position under the guidelines of what like Satya Nadella is giving overall. Amazon continues its games culling, dropping driving game from Forza Horizon devs. Yeah, Amazon's efforts as far as being a gaming publisher or gaming developer have been pretty useless and failures. PS5 and PC versions, PC players can try PlayStation's two big upcoming live services games this week. Let's see, we have a quote here. A remarkable leader, Asha Sharma, pays tribute to Phil Spencer as she replaces him as Microsoft Gaming CEO. I think that is probably an overstatement, considering Phil Spencer has been in charge of the last few years of major screw-ups of Microsoft in most gamers' opinion, and certainly even in the financials. I guess the only thing here is that maybe she won't focus on AI as much, and maybe she'll just bring back Xbox to being a console platform instead of a Xbox Game Pass platform, because that is saturated. I think they probably had plans to cycle between being a hardware manufacturer and a services provider and just go back and forth doing a bait and switch each time. But yeah, at some point they, I think, drank their own Kool-Aid and actually thought Games Pass as a service could just be everything always. But I don't think it will be. Nacon has filed for insolvency, says it's assessing all possible solutions to continue running. Usually when you file for insolvency, though, you really are just legally required to say you're assessing all possible solutions, but in reality you're just trying to go bankrupt and give up on the business. And for the most part, insolvency is not something you do in the United States. That's more of a European style way of doing things, where in the United States a lot of companies can just shut down immediately and disappear, and that is it. The CEO can take the money and run, and then it's just a matter of anybody having enough lawyers to hunt him down and sue him. Let's see. PlayStation finally confirmed Marvel's Wolverine release date and is coming before GTA 6. We'll look at that so we get the actual date. Ubisoft is making Nano 117 Pax Romana free to play this weekend. They have a video here for more WWE 2K26. Which, yeah, they're making a lot of videos around the wrestling game. PUBG publisher Krafton created a new chief AI officer executive role as it continues its AI first content strategy. And a cinema listing may have accidentally revealed a major Super Mario Galaxy movie character. Wasn't it Yoshi that was the revealed character before? Obscure cinematic animator joins The Witcher 4 studio CD Projekt Red. Don't know if that really matters too much. And let's see. Kingdom Come Deliverance director Daniel Bavara is stepping away from game development. Let's see if we can get some more details on that. And let's see. We have a quote here. No second chances. Anyone who cheats in Marathon will be banned forever, Bungie says. That is an interesting statement to make. Probably the right statement, though. I mean, generally, the right way to moderate a community is to say no second chances ever. One and you're gone. And then that position tends to be a little bit more fluid if you call customer service and beg. But I think Bungie might actually mean it And the danger certainly there is being banned for something people will feel is unjustified, which is almost always the case. People, even cheaters, feel like their bans are unjustified, and a forever ban is going to feel like it's way more unjustified, and then you lose any potential player base you might have. The dirty little secret is a lot of games, a lot of player versus player games, only live and succeed based on having bots and cheaters in it. And a lot of game developers would rather have numbers that say there was 1,000 people playing than show a reality that there's only actually 100 people playing and there is 600 bots and several hundred more cheaters playing in the mix. The Simpsons Hit and Run and Prototype Studio Radical Entertainment is back as New Radical Games. So it's not really the same business, I would assume. But yeah, Prototype is one game I want to cover at some point. It's probably a good game to actually play in contrast to a Resident Evil game, because effectively in Prototype you're playing as a BOW type monster, and so you're playing as the bad guy, which Resident Evil has never really done that, where you play as an infected bad guy against humans. It's a very different type of thought, certainly. It would be breaking the mold quite a bit on Resident Evil, and they just seem like they have succeeded very well by not breaking the mold and just doing the same things over and over again, and just being really good about timing and separating releases out so they don't flood the market. Amazon is shutting down another game, former Lionhead devs King of Meat. And then the Xbox co-founder believes it's being sunsetted in favor of AI and calls the new CEO a palliative care doctor. It's kind of crazy for people that the Xbox co-founder to come out and say that, but maybe he knows more than that headline implies. Let's see, another WWE thing. Then Ubisoft put the Black Flag leaders in charge of Assassin's Creed, and I think we talked about the rest of these articles. So yeah, Seamus Blackley believes Microsoft's gaming brand is being sunsetted and its new CEO has been brought in as a palliative care doctor who slides Xbox gently into the night, as in she's going to let it die. And Blackley left Microsoft in 2002, so you're talking a long time ago. And noticeably, he didn't go off and create a new Xbox console, although it would be very hard. I could see Amazon trying something like that. It would have been a smarter move to get into the game industry if Amazon or Netflix decided to make some kind of streaming box that also had some internal hardware in it to play games. Yeah, a Prime box, an Apple TV that had a disk drive to play games, a Netflix box. All of those would be potential candidates of who people might go with. Suppose it is somewhat fair to say the original Xbox had its own problems, but it was good enough to move to the Xbox 360, and at that point there was a major amount of success that they mishandled after the Xbox 360 run. Here you can see, just from this picture, what do you have in the background? You have Halo, Halo, Halo. It's all Halo being shown on PCs, not consoles, with gamer hardware and controllers. I'm not even sure that's an Xbox controller. That might be a PlayStation controller from the side-on profile there. But yeah, there is perhaps something also to be said about somebody bleaching their hair in matte booty. He's too old to be doing that. Just go gray naturally at a certain point and embrace your age. So, New Radical Games Studio has a new website and appears to be looking for work. That being said, I suspect that they don't have the rights to Simpsons Hit and Run at all, because you would also have to have a licensing agreement with The Simpsons or a prototype. They're claiming it's refunct two defunct studios in Radical Entertainment and Hothead Games. So 2 failures mixed together is supposed to make a success. That is questionable. This could be the beginning of something for laid off people from other companies, since they seem to have been Activision layoffs. And it perhaps highlights how long it takes to spin up your new company to replace the one you were just laid off on. Hothead Games was a Vancouver-based studio which made Penny Arcade Adventures, kind of an irrelevant game, Death Bank, which I enjoyed, but then it moved on to mobile games and went bankrupt in 2024. And the other one was Vivendi funded originally, and then part of Activision. It is definitely a game that a game company that feels like it's trying to establish itself as a spiritual successor to makers of somewhat successful games, not even that big successful games, which I don't know how much that helps you, or if that isn't just immediately pigeonholing you into a certain level of thinking. Yeah. But yeah, I guess you have to live on your successes and sing your own praises, because otherwise you are just going to look like a brand new company that hasn't done anything, and there's already a bunch of those. The Kingdom Come Deliverance director Daniel Vivara is stepping away from game development. The writer and designer will instead helm efforts to produce a Kingdom Come movie. Okay, that makes a decent amount of sense. I don't know how interesting a Kingdom Come movie will be. Which reminds me, I watched the Warcraft movie, and I don't think I talked about it at all. I think I watched that between the last stream and this one. Kind of hard to say anything about it, really. As somebody who hasn't played World of Warcraft and has only played like Warcraft 1 and Warcraft 2 many years ago, and don't remember there being much of a story in those original real-time strategy games. Clearly the Warcraft movie, when it was made many years ago, was designed to be for World of Warcraft fans. There was mounts, there's murlocs, there's little hints here and there of all the creatures that I really only know from playing Hearthstone. And definitely I remember back in the time the reason why the Warcraft movie was being developed and trying to be a success was that it was trying to be very friendly to China, and I think it got banned in China anyways and totally failed in that aspect, because they thought it was going to be this big blockbuster hit that would air in China and not have anything particularly controversial that would get it censored, and China just said, no, screw that, you're still an American or Western movie, and we don't want to have Western movies succeed in our cinemas. I think that was generally the gist of what happened there. I can't help but wonder, and I'm probably not the right person to speculate on it at all, but I can't help but wonder that the Warcraft movie was completely giving the audience the wrong thing. Because my guess, if I was going to make a Warcraft movie, is that I would want 2 hours, even 2 hours and 30 minutes worth of fighting and just action scenes and fighting. And there's a lot of that, but there's, I don't think, much of it at all in the first hour. So for a 2-hour movie, the first hour, it's very little fighting. It's a lot of magic. It's a lot of fantasy. It's a lot of establishing characters that probably don't matter that much. It's a lot of name dropping and references to things that might have happened in World of Warcraft. It's pretty obvious that they are retelling events and stories that would have been written for expansions and seasons of World of Warcraft, but that kind of writing is not particularly that important or that good. Where it feels like, to me, you would have just been better off having fight sequence, barely 5 minutes of conversation, then a fight sequence, barely 5 minutes of conversation, then another fight sequence. There's a lot of CGI with the orcs. The movie starts with the orcs. It really establishes the one main orc as the main protagonist of the story instead of the humans, which seems kind of crazy. The main bad guy is pretty obviously Gul'dan, but then they also bring in other bad guys, and there's just a lot of stuff, a lot of setup for a sequel that never obviously happened, a lot of talking, a lot of political drama. It felt like it took far too much of what the Lord of the Rings was as far as walking the ring to Mordor, and not enough of the big battle scenes for at the end of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, where it's just fighting and fighting and fighting. But yeah, I probably wasn't the right audience for it, but I am going to try and make a bigger effort to watch some of these movies, even if they are for games I haven't played. I know I have Tekken on Prime Video to watch next on my watch list. That's one of the ones I may pick up and watch. But I'm trying to kind of catch up and see these awful video game movies, but they've all been awful. I mean, I can tell you that already. There hasn't been a single video game movie that was really good at being either a movie or being a faithful translation to the video game to movie form. I would say the Warcraft movie is perhaps a previous generation of these attempts. But yeah, the idea of making a Kingdom Come movie, to get back to this article, having not really knowing the story of Kingdom Come is questionable, but I mean, you could certainly make a medieval knights movie and you wouldn't have that much competition. So if there is a really decent story around Kingdom Come that can be turned into a 2-hour movie, I think that would work well. Of course, if I were to use a reference, I can compare it to Skyrim. Skyrim movie wouldn't be that interesting. It would have a lot of the same problems of the Warcraft movie, just having way too much side quests and way too many characters and all of that. It would be hard, certainly, to turn something like Skyrim into a 2-hour movie that would feel anything like a good story and wouldn't just be a very generic fantasy story. A big problem, I think, in that case also is that the narratives in Elder Scrolls RPGs are somewhat determined by your own actions and your role playing there. So any movie, you're going to have to make things canonical that may not have been canonical in certain person's playthrough. It would make a lot more sense to me, though, for Microsoft to say, we're going to make an Elder Scrolls movie, and we're going to retell the events of Elder Scrolls 1, 2, 3. Mix that, maybe take the first 3 games even and merge them into one 2-hour movie. Then you could have an Oblivion movie to recap that, and then you could have a Skyrim movie to be the end cap of a trilogy of Elder Scrolls games, or trilogy of Elder Scrolls movies, to work your way up to whatever the next Elder Scrolls game is. And I think that might work well. Kind of in the same way that the books offered a story of The Witcher before the Witcher games came out. Although that is a fairly different scenario, and the books are fairly different from the Witcher games. PlayStation finally confirms Marvel's Wolverine release date, and it's coming before GTA 6. Wolverine was announced 5 years ago and only recently showed gameplay. It's going to be released on September 15th, 2026. So that is long in development. Marathon and Horizon Hunters Gathering. Horizon Hunters Gathering is one title, too many words. Like, they're obviously making Horizon very small here, and they just want us to be called Hunters Gathering. We'll have PlayStation Network Trials test run between Friday the 27th and Sunday, March 1st on PC and PS5. And you need to sign up for the PlayStation beta program. And then the Assassin's Creed Hexi director, Clint Hawking, has left Ubisoft as part of the franchise of Evil. He previously helmed Splinter Cell Chaos Theory, Far Cry 2, and Watch Dogs Legion. Which, yeah, that game wasn't particularly that successful. Far Cry 2, I think, may have been. Splinter Cell Chaos Theory, I don't even know what that game is. And Hexi, I guess, is a game that is still in development, and that's why I don't recognize it either. Looks like it's probably supposed to be based on witchcraft and hexes of some sort, so you'd assume it's probably in the North American region at some point. Yeah, lots of people leaving Ubisoft, and it's, in my mind, very questionable whether Ubisoft will be able to really produce too many more games at all. So very possible in my mind this Hexi game will never come out. That's going to bring us to the Gematsu articles, which we'll cover in the normal fashion. Ninja Gaiden 4 DLC The Two Masters launches March 4th. When did Ninja Gaiden 4 come out? I feel like that was months ago, but maybe it was just maybe 6 weeks ago. Yeah, I see trailers like this, and once again I'm reminded I wish I just had more time. Yeah, it would be very nice, certainly, to jump into a more action hack and slash game also and play that. But yeah. I don't know when I'd get around to this. Yeah, this came out October 20th, 2025, so we are basically at the 3-month mark. It is rated very positively, so this DLC would be a good reason to go back. I bet it hasn't been discounted too much. Yeah, 30%. And they definitely are asking quite a premium here, $70. Which, that conversation has not been discussed lately. I don't know if that means games have given up on that and they are going back to being $60 affairs, or if it is just a case that there really haven't been any AAA games that have come out that have tried that again. as far as $70 experiences. Times are tough, yo, is definitely something to remember, and these games are not worth buying at full price, in my opinion, for pretty much anyone. Balatro is now available for the Switch too, so more people can play that game and spend a lot of time on it. People overwhelmingly positive on it, although uniquely I bought this game out of order and maybe paid $11.99 for it, and that's a fine price for it, but I wouldn't really be surprised if we see it down to $5 at some point in the future. And I wasn't super satisfied with Balatro. Just didn't feel like there was enough modifiers, and I don't feel like the game was really helping you to unlock and succeed at everything. Instead, it felt like it was really just giving you a system to waste a lot of time playing the games over and over again and losing over and over again. The win to loss ratio was off, I would say, by quite a bit. And you just were not winning enough. The cards, the jokers weren't changing things enough. Balatro could really benefit, in my opinion, by having some DLC come out for it that would add a bunch of other cards that made the game easier. Even if it was just like paid DLC to make the game easier, which I don't want to see that as a thing, but maybe a free DLC you don't have to install to make the game easier. Right now it's only a soundtrack that's available. And this game is from February 2nd of 2024, so it's definitely the case where they could be at a 2-year anniversary and put out some update that would give new challenges and make the game easier. But if anything, I think maybe it'll just come out with a Balatro 2 completely unconnected and charge another $11 for it. Let's see, My Hero Academia All Justice's DLC character Star and Stripe launches February 26th. Yep. Don't know this character, but I can say this game is mixed reviewed, so people are not particularly happy with it. Amazon Games abandons plan to publish Maverick Games' developed open-world driving game. The game itself is still in development and is in talk with publishing partners, which, in fairness, that might be a good thing because Amazon Games has not really proven itself to be a good publisher or capable of publishing games in the first place. Nikon filed for insolvency. This is a France-based publisher, which it filing for insolvency may have as much to do with the overall financial economic problems of France as it does their specific company doing something wrong. And so yeah, being in France, it filing for insolvency then has to go through a much more governmental legal process to reorganize and lay off people than in, say, the United States, where they could just go bankrupt and lay people off like crazy, or don't even have to go bankrupt and could lay people off like crazy. Let's see, Usonatsu, the summer romance bloomed from a lie, is coming to the Switch on June 18th. It's currently available for PC, I assume. It's a visual novel, kind of a pencil sketchy animation style. You don't see that too often. Then Gunvolt Chronicles Luminous Avenger 9 1+2 Dual Collection has been announced for PS5, Switch 1 and 2, and PC. Which, yeah, this is a side-scrolling beat-em-up game, it looks like. Yeah, this Usunatsu Summer Romance Bloom from a Lie is 91% positive with 392 user reviews, which for a visual novel does make it viable to put it on the wish list. Although, increasingly, I think the only reason I'd buy visual novels is if I was going to play them and then review them without showing any footage or spoiling the story too much, or if somebody in my Steam family was really into them, which I wouldn't have a big problem with that. Nieces or nephews, either way, being into reading would be a good thing, even if there is perhaps some more mature or LGBT type things that might not be age appropriate for some of them. Now, still want to make sure about age appropriateness. This has some animations going on, it seems, in at least that image, instead of just still images. One of the reasons why you see a lot of success of visual novels still to this day on Steam, although I'm not seeing a ton of them come out in the past couple of weeks, is because you may very well have somebody who has artistic skill and someone who has good writing skill, and that might be the same person or different people, but they may not really have a branching video game mechanic that they are able to program for or understand. And if there's no branching at all, then it would be a kinetic visual novel. If there's minimal branching, in that you might be able to decide who you end up dating in a lot of the romance visual novels, you get a typical visual novel at that point where it is a little bit of options, but for the most part you're still telling the same story. Yeah. This Gunvolt Luminous game came out is coming out July 9th. Hasn't come out yet, so I'll put that on the follow list. Sonic Racing Crossworlds Tangle and Whisper content drop update launches February 25th. Tangle is a playable character, Whisper is a playable character. It is a shame more people aren't talking about Sonic Racing Crossworlds. Again, that's a game that I just feel like deserves more attention. And yeah, people are reviewing it very highly. There's 634 people online right now playing it. Not particularly high numbers, though. It's been out for several months. But I guess it probably would be the default thing to recommend if you were going to play something like Mario Kart on PC. Since Mario Kart isn't on PC, Sonic Racing Crossworlds, I think, is your best bet. But there is definitely that sword dangling over this game, in that it would just have to be another racing game to come out that was more talked about, that was played more, and it would dethrone this game pretty easily. Marvel's Wolverine launches September 15th. We talked about that. I think we're increasingly going to try and save time by not watching trailers too. A new version of the original Final Fantasy VII for PC is now available. Remember, they said you would lose access to the original version of the Final Fantasy VII if you hadn't bought it before. I went out of my way to buy the original version of Final Fantasy VII so I could have both. But unless there's major problems or changes sneakily put in here, censorship or something, I would assume that this new PC version is the better version, because it includes 3x speed mode and the ability to turn off battle encounters, which just means a more abridged version of going through these older games. Yeah, the only autosave features, yeah, more and more old JRPGs probably need these kinds of things to make them palatable to a new audience. But yeah, even at that, there's probably full-on remakes that are better. But then weirdly, the Final Fantasy VII remake right now isn't being a faithful remake to what it was before. Yeah, you can see this old game is visually old, low polygon. Yep, starting to warm up outside according to my Zigbee soil sensor. Which that doesn't make a lot of sense because I thought I had that temperature set really high. I'll have to check that. So I assume to play the new version you have to do it through the library function, and to play the old version you have to do it through the library function, and I assume there'll just be two games called Final Fantasy VII next to each other. And I can't help but think that nobody really wants these kinds of turn-based interfaces, even if some games might have that kind of gameplay style. You want it to look much faster and modern and not just a bunch of numbers. Moving on, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Splintered Fate DLC character Alopex is now available alongside a free update. I assume this is Alopex. Something's weird here on the Ninja Turtles. We have purple with the stick, we have red with the sai, we have blue with the swords, and then we have orange with the nunchucks. So, who is this? Is this some kind of new character? Robot armor? I guess it is. Yeah. Ninja Turtles in particular would not be anywhere as common these days if it weren't for the fact that they sold it to Nickelodeon, and Nickelodeon is now licensing Ninja Turtles like crazy to make money on it. But yeah, otherwise it would be a pretty stagnant, outdated old series. As for the actual game, it's being received well, so no big deals there. Let's see, Overwatch Rush has been announced for iOS and Android. It's currently in early stages of development. It is a new top-down hero shooter designed for iOS and Android. So they just announced that they were going to try and right the direction with Overwatch by getting rid of the 2 after Overwatch 2 and moving the story forward with new characters in Overwatch. And now, before they've even proved that they can right the ship, they are trying to ridiculously over-monetize Overwatch and make a mobile game, which I suspect that's not Overwatch's audience. I don't think that the people who played Overwatch 1 and the people who stayed around for Overwatch 2 were just waiting for the ability to play it on their cell phones and would want to play it on their cell phones. This is the kind of thing you do with Pokemon 29 years into a series when you have nothing less left to lose. And that's exactly what they did with like Pokemon Unity, I believe was the name of the mobile game. It was kind of like this. It's not something you do with a series that you need to revitalize. Even the Horizon spin-off game feels less like a cash grab than what this feels like. And I gotta say, personally, I just hate the idea of all these buttons being on screen, even if this is just for the trailer. I kind of hate the idea of buttons being on the screen. And if the buttons aren't on the screen, then you really have no input devices to use. I would say logically this game falls apart because I think what attracted people to Overwatch was the colorful, uniquely designed models originally of Overwatch 1. And this top-down perspective does not really highlight your colorful, uniquely designed models. Instead, you have a lot of people walking over each other and having effects over them. So it's kind of hard to even tell who is who. It definitely feels like it is pretty much a button mashing affair. Let's move on. Let's see, Panzer Knight's Commander's Edition has been announced for the PS5 and Xbox Series. This is one of many anime people in tanks forms of games / animes I have seen. Yeah, Panzer, I believe, is a German word, and this is just kind of a example still that there is just not a lot of German World War II hate that exists out there amongst Japanese developers, because the history that they are taught, it does not depict really the Germans or the Japanese of the time in World War II as the complete and ultimate bad guys who should be reviled for all time like it is taught in the West. So yeah, it is toned down here and you're not seeing full-on Nazi imagery, but yeah, the era of tanks, if you're just into tanks, would be during World War II. And yeah, some of these I guess are American and British tanks too, but those are the bonus tanks. Yeah. Yeah, here it says clash with Allied armor in high-stakes skirmishes, which means you are playing on the Axis side, which would be the German side and the Nazi side. Yeah. Is there anything wrong with that, really? Not really. I mean, if it's art, it's a fictional story. If you want to tell that story, that's fine. I think it is probably wrong that Japanese people are not educated about the full atrocities of Germany to the point where they would reject it. But yeah, there's a lot of effort, certainly of the United States and the West, to make sure that Germans specifically knew what the Nazis were doing, because a lot of it was secret. And there probably was some propaganda in there too. And there was a lot of effort, and that was basically the main reason for the Nuremberg trials, was to make sure the world knew what was going on in the concentration camps and all of that, because there was a concerted effort to either hush that up or destroy evidence of it as Germany started to fall apart and lose the war. Personally, I just don't think tanks are that interesting. Even brand new modern tanks are very much designed for purpose and not particularly an interesting vehicle to create or even gameplay mechanic to have. If you are going to do something like that, having something like a RV or a mud runner type vehicle that can move faster is more interesting, or going more sci-fi in your tank might be more interesting. And modern warfare very rarely benefits from having tanks over drones that can just bomb from the sky. And both of those types of weapons of war are designed specifically so that your side can not have to get too close to conflicts and can do massive amounts of damage from a distance, and generally they don't have to be too sure that they're actually hitting the right target. The wrong targets getting hit don't get counted very often in war, and it is fairly high percentages of people that are just in the wrong place in the wrong time that are getting blown up or shot at when they're not actually enemy combatants. Moving on back to Gamatsu video game news, though, Trails of the Sky 2nd Chapter Golden Wings Edition has been announced. In this case, the blimps are more sci-fi as far as flying tanks. So we're going to compare that. It's still not out yet. There certainly is something more appealing to me as far as RPG games where it's magical swords and magical spells. More of a fantasy world. Something less connected to something that could be real. Yeah. But yeah, we also have to point out that reviews are not terrible on this game. So I'm going to put this on the wish list and make a YouTube short on it, but I do question whether I would want to play this game. Although I could certainly play this game and then talk a lot about it overall. Although I am not by any means an expert in World War II. There definitely were a lot more people that were experts in World War II military and were obsessed about it, and that was basically their entire lives that they spent around World War II. But yeah, newer generations don't tend to be super obsessed with historical wars, and nobody got really obsessed with Vietnam in the way that they actually liked talking about it. If you were talking about Vietnam, it was because it was a travesty and a mess. Moving on, Koei Tecmo is going to transfer part of Team Ninja the Gust, the division behind Dead or Alive Extreme Venus Vacation, and Atelier Resolurina Forgotten Alchemy, and the Polar Knight Liberator. That's 3 very different games. So Gust, I assume, is still under Team Ninja, but they are going to call Gust Division 2. So Team Ninja Division 2 will split into 2 divisions, which will be Team Ninja Division 1 and Team Ninja Division 2. So it feels like what they're saying here is there's too many people in the same division working on the same thing, and so they needed to split it up, probably because they wanted budgets to go down. Maybe they just wanted people to move around, although in Japan I don't think you get the opportunity to move around that much. Your coworkers are just your coworkers for life. This may also hint at a point that the extreme Venus vacation and the higher visuals of Dead or Alive are going to be handled by a different division or just phased out entirely. Of course, this just could also be some weird financial reshuffling, so who knows. Atelier, we do want to see a new Atelier game come out, maybe by a different team, but also they could take a little bit of a break there and they could try and be a little bit better in making sure Atelier games are great when they come out instead of being iffy when they come out, which is really where they are at the moment. Lollipop Chainsaw Repop Nintendo Switch 2 edition has been delayed to an unannounced date. The delay is due to the need for significant updates. I would just have to assume that it doesn't run particularly well on the Switch 2. And they just don't want the level of performance I guess they're already getting with the Switch 1 version. Yeah. I would think it would be rather weird, since it's already out on the Switch 1, if Nintendo came back and was holding it to some level of different standards or censorship. Lollipop Chainsaw Repop is 88% overall, 84% in the last 30 days. And the biggest complaint I ever heard about it was it just didn't have the original licensed music, which, yeah, the music they had licensed in the original Lollipop Chainsaw was pretty mainstream music, so that's would have been impossible to cheaply license. Although it is a shame that the way to get around that is to buy the classic original soundtrack, and even in that, you're not 100% certain whether that puts the music in the game. The soundtrack is not included in the game itself. So yeah, what you're doing effectively is just buying the songs, and then, unless there's some kind of hack or mod to put it back in the game, you just would be able to play these songs separately. But yeah, here you see missing tracks, low quality. Why like this? It's great the original is finally getting released, don't get me wrong, but the quality is subpar. Only low quality MP3s, not even high quality MP3s are FLAC. I don't know if you can actually put FLACs on Steam. Steam soundtrack options are not promoted very much, or probably haven't been worked on in years. So yeah, the idea of buying the soundtrack for $10 and still not being able to have the music actually in the game where it should be, just replacing like one sound file with another, which should be pretty simple to do, sucks. But that is the only thing that I've heard people say really sucks. I bet there is a mod out there that would fix it, or something. There is certainly a question now, since this came out September 11th, 2024, terrible day to release it. It's been a couple of years now. Are we possibly going to see a Lollipop Chainsaw 2? Probably not, I would guess. If we are going to see anything, it might come out 3 to 2 years from now, before it even got announced. Are we going to see anything like Lollipop Chainsaw? Sorta. I mean, Romeo is a Dead Man is not too different. It's just not Juliet with a chainsaw attacking zombies. Are we going to... There definitely was a lot of talk about whether to make a remake or a sequel. And at the end of the day, they decided to make a remake. But there was, I think, more interest in a sequel overall. I guess I have to leave it at that because there's not too much else more to say. Typing Escape launches March 13th. Horror typing game. Priced at $9.99. So it's mixing the word dying and typing together to get typing. Visually, it doesn't look particularly impressive. Good Mythical Morning on YouTube did a whole typewriting challenge where they tested each other's ability to type. I don't know if they did a particularly great job. They were on some website that was giving them some fairly weird things to type in as far as lines of text, and it was repeating the lines of text too often. And it was 1 minute typing test instead of 3, 5 minute, 10 minute typing test, which would be more accurate. And yeah, for the most part, their keyboard wasn't ergonomic and they weren't getting particularly high typing. Different people ranged from like 32 words per minute at the low end to I think 92 at the high end. I believe at one time I was tested to do somewhere around, I think it was exactly 112 words per minute at 100% accuracy is what I was tested at. But that was certainly back in my heyday where I would have been doing a lot more typing and would have been consistently practicing typing and bashing my fingers on keyboards to type at that speed. The world record for typing, I believe on a typewriter even, was 365 words per minute. So you can go really, really fast, and I imagine you can go close to 1,000 words per minute if you were typing in stenography, which is kind of cheating. Anyways, but yeah. The main thing about typing is to stick with it and be 100% accurate, because you will get really punished by most of them by leaving in typos. Whereas if you type with 100% accuracy, you'll get the fastest results. And if you're really good at typing, you should be able to completely have your eyes always on the screen, and your hand and the keyboard can be just blocked with a piece of cloth or something, and it should be full-on touch typing. And honestly, you could read what you were about to type and then close your eyes and type it all for a while, just focusing on it. But yeah, I don't know if fast typing really matters that much these days, particularly now when speech to text is approaching a fairly decent level of accuracy. So dictating, for most people, I think works pretty well. And when you do need to type for programming and things like that, you're probably thinking about what the programming is doing as much as you're typing things, so typing at a rapid pace is just going to have you make a bunch of typos and your code not work. So yeah, obviously 80 words per minute is probably what you should target for. You want to do at least that much. and the vast majority of people won't do any typing, and they'll be just using their thumbs on a cell phone, which really ruins typing, and then they won't have even like 30 words per minute at most. Moving on, Mouse PI for Hire has been delayed to April 16th. I'm not particularly surprised. I'm still certainly wondering how much of a game this is, if it is a game at all. It shows some very interesting trailers and screenshots here and there, but I'm not sure how much of that is going to prove to connect to a full game. One of the things here you can see is you've got like a camera in one shot, and then you have a gun in one screenshot, and then a cane in one screenshot, and there seems to be several different weapons, and then boxing in one shot. And yeah, I just don't know how much of that is actually a game. I'm not sure they've even put out a actual depiction of what the actual gameplay is. Yeah, it looks like it is kind of a Doom style shooter in there. That entire part of the code just crashed and disappeared. Moving on, King of Meat is going to end service on April 9th, and all purchases are going to be refunded. This is an Amazon Games publisher game made by Glowmade, 4-player cooperative co-op game, which I don't recognize at all. It's teetering around 71% in the last 30 days with 14 user reviews, and 73% with 362 reviews overall. It's been out since October 2nd of 2025, and we can see the numbers are low with an all-time peak of 320 people. So there was just not a lot of people playing it, and for a co-op game, that is just not going to work. And it's probably a great example of Amazon Game Studio just not promoting this. I never saw commercials for this when I'm watching Prime videos for this game. In fact, it's very weird what video game related things do get promoted on Prime Video, if anything video game related does get promoted. For instance, like the Fallout TV series, I think had Xbox commercials being promoted, which seems a little weird. Visually, I kind of like the style. The gameplay mechanic is not for me. As far as 4-player co-op, there's perhaps an inconsistency in the different character designs that might be a problem, and the entire environment looks pretty boring, and this big guy definitely seems to stand out as being too different. But yeah, the main thing I would blame there is Amazon just being a bad publisher and not putting any advertisement behind it, which is crazy because Amazon can do a lot of advertisement. I look at Amazon.com probably hundreds of times more often in a month than I should, dozens of times a day, more than I should, and I never see them try and promote any video games, not on their front page, not in any special kind of emails, not anywhere. Moving on to the Gaming on Linux articles. Let's see. Rotato has gotten a DRM free release on Good Old Games. That's interesting to see a game that had DRM before get released without DRM to enter into a new platform or storefront. Rotato is overwhelmingly positive on Steam. Steam technically is DRM, so there can't really be a DRM free of Rotato on Steam, although any third-party DRM could be removed if there was a third-party DRM. I don't see anything hinting that there is that. And it is crazy how you still get a lot of these games promoted for the Steam Deck when the Steam Deck's not available. Although I guess it would also be kind of stupid if they stopped promoting the Steam Deck. They want people to remember it exists, even if it is out of stock. Let's see, KDE Plasma 6.6.1 rolls out with lots of fixes for KWin. KWin, I believe, is the start menu. Although it may do more than that. Let's see. Blue Devil Bluetooth will no longer tell you about connection failures when there wasn't any. Various improvements on Kicker Launcher and Task Manager, but the biggest set of issues are by far bugs solved with the Window Manager KWin. So KWin is the Window Manager, Kicker is the start menu. Too many things starting with K, and K stands for cool. That's how old the KDE cool desktop environment is. That it was back in the 90s or so when they decided to name it cool with a K. I got a weird thing on Windows while I was playing the Resident Evil 2 remake, where apparently I lost my internet connection for a brief time, and there's something about the Resident Evil 2 remake that I opted into to send information and stats back to their servers, and I don't think I'm really getting anything worthwhile from it, but yeah. Apparently, when I lost internet, it popped up a box saying your wireless is down, which is an odd assumption to make, that a PC game would be on wireless, or even a console game would be on wireless. Yeah. Even the docked Switch 1 and Switch 2 feel like they would be more on-wired than wireless. Let's see. Moving on, the Boomer Shooter Blueprint Bundle is an epic deal with Suleco, Cultic, and more. I don't really know any of these games, but I don't play that. Play Boomer Shooters. Happy 4 years to the Steam Deck, still the top PC gaming handheld. 4 years ago, the original Steam Deck LCD was released, with it going on to change how everyone sees handheld gaming, PCs, and Linux for gaming. And yeah, I would say, not reading all of this, there isn't a new handheld out there that beats the original Steam Deck LCD, with the exception of the Steam Deck OLED version. There have been more powerful Steam Deck competitors. There have been ones that have run Windows, and none of them have been as nice as the Steam Deck has been, or gotten anywhere as many updates and support for them. So yeah, SteamOS 3.7.20 is probably close to where they are now. Then low power downloads was added fairly recently, and being able to add hardware details and Steam reviews in particular. Now we are waiting for the Steam Machine and the Steam Controller 2 and the Steam Frame to come out. Moving on, Lutris version 0.5.21 and 0.5.22 arrive with Valve's Sniper runtime support in new game runners. One thing about the Steam Deck still is there's a lot of side loading library platforms for running games that you actually don't own on Steam. Let's see, Direct 7 VK version 1.4 brings further enhancements for all Direct 3D games via Vulkan. So we are continuing to see better support for older games in particular too. And honestly, I wonder if it isn't the case that it's perhaps 75% of the work that needs to be done these days is to get older games like Darkstone, Divine Divinity, Mortal Kombat 4 running, compared to 25% of the work being done to just get new games to run. Because I suspect new games are just easier, better optimized, and easier to program for, and already handled for the most part. I very rarely see change logs that highlight brand new games having trouble. Yeah, and maybe some of that is because the actual developers, not Valve, is putting efforts to make sure their new games run. That could very well be the case too. Direct 3D 5, 6, and 7 is all older versions of Direct 3D. So, we talked about the headline before. Discord delays its global rollout of age verification to improve transparency and add more options. So will that stem the bleeding, or will people come back to using Discord if they were thinking about using Discord before? Or is it too late, and have they already lost any possibility of a new audience? Honestly, I would think that there was very little possibility of a new audience on Discord anyways. I've wanted my own personal Discord to be very successful, but I haven't really seen a way in which people can find my new Discord, or people are interested in joining a Discord, as it were. But also I haven't found a competitor either. The truth is, I think people just don't want to be on forums or communicate with each other that much at all, particularly if they don't perceive they're getting a value from being on a forum. And so following somebody on TikTok, following somebody on YouTube, it has a perception of value that they're getting something they want, whereas following somebody on a Discord is more of a question mark, I suspect, as far as you just don't know what you're getting, or whether you even want what you will get. Final Fantasy VII arrives on Good Old Games with a new edition live on Steam too. So, yeah. We can see, though, that Final Fantasy VII has mostly negative reviews from this 2013 version, or maybe from the version before it. Let's see what the negative reviews are saying. Let's see. I still have a positive review on the original Steam release, but they've messed up with the latest update. This was February 24th that this was written. Whoever this got outsourced to learned nothing from the failures of the 2013 Steam release, which required weeks of rust patches to get it to a playable state. For some reason, they've removed the 2013 Steam release and replaced it with this version. It still has a launcher for configuration, but now there's a weird emulator style overlay for configuring options in the game. It's got two different control panels, just like new Windows. This is how you know they don't care. Yeah. So yeah, clicking on that seems to have gone from negative to mixed. Weirdly. So yeah, there is two versions, and this new version doesn't seem to be well received. There's a bilinear filtering, don't like. Combat speed is completely broken. Many issues with overlays and texts. Test your game before you launch them. Delay them if they're not ready. It isn't hard. Okay, so this was what I was worried about as far as Final Fantasy VII's newest version, is that it was just going to be a garbage fire, and this is just Square Enix once again being ridiculous and stupid. They very possibly, I would speculate, at least there's a possibility that they lost the rights to the 2013 version and couldn't continue to sell it, or that there is even something illegal copyright infringing in Final Fantasy VII as far as the 2013 edition, and thus they needed to replace it with a newer version. But also it could just be Square Enix being stupid. Yeah, but I kind of saw that coming, particularly for Square Enix. But for any kind of iconic favorite game, if they're putting out a new version and they're getting rid of the old version, that sends off red flags in my mind. First of all, is why are you getting rid of the old version? It is only to force people to use the new version. And then very consistently, people are not happy when they are forced into something new. And fairly often, when they are forced into something new, it is seemingly very obviously worse than the old thing. Because the old thing may be giving a lot of free passes that the new game wouldn't be given. Fanatical's Play on the Go Elite Collection Bundle for February 2026 has some gems in it. Apparently, one of those gems is not Tomb Raider 4 and 6 Remastered. Although, why does it not have 5 in that too? That would be a weird remaster to only do 4 and 6 but not 5. Death Stranding 2 PC specs have been revealed along with a portable preset for handhelds. Yeah. Death Stranding is a game that is probably a little too old school as far as how it wastes players' time, when really it just wants to tell a story. So the grinding aspects and the gameplay mechanics, I think, probably should just be really scaled down, if not completely removed, for Death Stranding, in favor of telling the narrative that they want to tell. Although maybe if you sat through just a ton of cutscenes in Death Stranding 2, you'd be overwhelmed. I'm fairly overwhelmed in the Resident Evil 2 remake. Early, when I first started playing the game, you saw a lot of cutscenes back to back with barely any gameplay in between. Once you actually get into the police station, cutscenes stop happening after about an hour or so. But yeah, there definitely was a point in the first hour of RE2 Remake where it felt like you were just watching an animated show more than playing. Death Stranding 2 is not out yet, and I assume its story is going to be as weird as Death Stranding 1 was, if not weirder. Yeah. Why are these guys all in the rain? I thought the rain was like acid rain in the first game. I guess maybe that stopped being a thing in Death Stranding 2. Yeah, you look at these screenshots even, and it is just a wild assortment of stuff, it looks like. There was a DF Retro question that was posed as to whether you need to play the first Death Stranding game to understand the story of Death Stranding 2, and I think they resolved that you get kind of a recap at the beginning of Death Stranding 2, so you don't need to play the first game. Me being a completionist would want to play the first game if I was going to play any of them. Although I honestly don't think I would play either of them. Just not worth my time, I think. It's too weird. It's too well known already. It's too much walking around delivering packages. If there was an abridged version that was good of Death Stranding 1, I would probably consider it again and maybe play it then. However, we just saw Square Enix try to make an abridged version of Final Fantasy VII, and you see that didn't work out. Use your train to smash bandits into a cliff in the updated Fog Piercer demo. Interesting. Fog Piercer, clearly inspired by Snowpiercer, the movie from many years ago, and eventually a TV series. Also, it's not actually out yet, however. And then Firefox 148 arrives with AI controls, as Mozilla promised they would. Firefox version 148.0 has been released, and with it you can now control what generative AI features are enabled and disabled. These settings are buried or difficult to find either. There's a dedicated and clear section, so I'll have to go and check that out and turn that off. One of the things we ran into in the last stream was there was a page that was embedding a blue sky page, and Firefox just blocked it. And I looked into it, and Firefox just told me, yeah, we blocked it to prevent clickjacking, and there's nothing you can do about it. There's no way to allow that type of embedding. So I would assume that was a case of the webmaster embedding the link wrong, and that this isn't going to be a consistent thing going forward where embedded links get blocked, because that would kind of suck if that was a thing. Moving on, inspired by the classic Doom RPG, the Dungeons of Dusk demo is out now. Doom RPG is questionable as to how big of a classic it really is. Because yeah, I know somebody converted Doom into an RPG, but I don't think people talked about it that much. Moving on, battling castles on wheels, Wanderberg might be my new favorite thing. Okay, Gaming on Linux seems to be enthralled with it. I'll put it on the follow list and make a YouTube short on it. Vampire Crawlers from Vampire Survivors devs is a promising but not quite yet there experience, I guess. Which I did wonder about that. They must have early access. Yeah. Vampire Survivors is fairly fast paced. I don't see how a card-based crawling dungeon crawler could reach that level of speed. If you could reach that level of speed, that would be revolutionary, but it's very questionable whether that would ever actually happen. Now it'll bring us to GameDeveloper.com articles. Hell Is Us and Styx publisher Nacon files for insolvency. Interesting how they have different games they're comparing, they're mentioning. Yeah, I don't think the Styx series ever got successful enough. And Hell Is Us, I think, came out fairly recently, but not with a lot of coverage. There's inherently a danger in having hell in your name. It may scare off a small percentage of religious people, and it may very well just demonetize and de-advertise your game. Many people may just say, hey, we're not going to talk about or promote something with hell in the name. That's where Diablo, in particular, figured it out pretty early. Instead of, if Diablo had been called Satan or Devil, it would have been less of a success. But by using a Spanish version of the devil, Diablo, instead of Devil, it got talked about a little bit more. Let's see, quote, "We failed our most basic job. Discord delays age verification rollouts." We'll see how far that goes before they try and push it again. And then X Radical Entertainment and Hothead Games dev form a new studio. New Radical Games is spearheaded by the CEO Ian Wilkinson and COO Tim Benison. I'd love to see them try and make a new game with new technology like Prototype. I don't know if it would be particularly that new or unique. A lot of what is in Prototype feels inspired by Spider-Man games, and so with Spider-Man games now existing and being in a good state, Prototype would have to be a little bit more creative in the actions and abilities. Very much you could make a Venom game at any point that would trounce a new Prototype game if you're not careful. But yeah, we'll see if they make any games in this new company. The Kingdom Come Deliverance director steps away from game development to make movies instead. We talked about that. And then Amazon is shutting down the UGC dungeon crawler called King of Meat after 6 months. Okay, so that puts us in a good position where I'm going to take a little bit of a break before we go through all the games on Steam. We've taken just slightly over 2 hours to get to this point, so we aren't taking forever. I'll be back in a few minutes. Hey everybody, sorry about that. I'm back. Man, I really hate how old my phone is now. It's basically unplug it at 100%, start streaming for 2 hours, it's down to 0% at the end. And that's my phone literally sitting around doing nothing. Anyways, that has nothing to do with video games though. So let's go through all the new games on Steam and then we'll be done with the stream. So, this game has a bunch of meme characters, some of which may actually be copyrighted, I'm not sure. So as we go through the games, if I swipe down like this, that means I don't care for it enough to even make a YouTube short on it. If I put it on the follow list, that means I might actually want to buy it. Then if I swipe over that way, that means I'm leaving the tab open to I'm leaving the tab open to make a YouTube short on it. Problem we might be running into though is this, where I have in the past looked at all games except for Russian language only games and wanted to show them off. But there is possibly an argument that I should change my search parameters and not, or make a Violent Monkey script is probably the better way to do it, and not look at games that are Japanese only. But then the problem is there are games that say they're Japanese only and then they get translated to English later, or they look like they support English to some extent and just get labeled as Japanese language only. I have a railroad game here. I'll give that a YouTube short. City Hunter is yet another one of these games that doesn't have a checkbox behind it. I need to investigate why that is. That level of inconsistency exists there. City Hunter is very old. If not NES game originally, it definitely had an anime based on it too. The OVA, one-shot type anime. It may not have actually been only one episode, but could have been 3 or 4. Yeah, I kind of like this art style, so I'll give it a chance. Increasingly, I guess I should also probably have a Violent Monkey script that checks to see if if it's already on the following list and already has a checkbox on it. That would save me a little bit of time, although none of it's going to really save a ton of time. Here you have a cat-themed Sokoban puzzle game, box pushing game, which I don't know if I really want to play a box pushing game, something that was exclusively a box pushing game. Yeah. Here we have what looks like an RPG Maker game, although uniquely the character designs are more chibi in the art style. There's not enough screenshots here to tell me there is actually a story in this visual novel. No text at all. Yeah. So yeah, apparently my outdoor Zigbee soil temperature thermometer did see, again not in English, that the temperature of the soil went above 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Although, in fairness, that's probably too low of an alarm setting to have, and so I bumped it up to 100. And if in the middle of the hottest part of the day the soil hits that temperature, that doesn't consistently mean that it would be that temperature like before sun up or after sundown when I'm actually watering the grass. So I have to make sure the data I'm collecting is fit for the purpose of whether or not my sprinkler system would go on or off, which also would have to have my sprinkler system actually connected and water going through it at the moment. The whole 6 weeks more of winter thought from the hedgehog seems to not really be applying. But it is kind of a good excuse to not water the grass for at least a couple more weeks. And I am on the end of what has been a very weird experiment on trying to reduce the amount of water I was using for December, January, and February. I think I did as well as I could, but I have run out of alternatives, mostly baby wipes, so I am just washing my hands in a sink with soap like a normal person once again. And then I am going to have a ton of laundry extra to do, and I'm not sure when the reading actually happens, so probably should investigate that further. It may have already happened, but yeah, it was a very weird experiment. It would only have worked because I had a ton of baby wipes already, and nobody else was living with me, so I could do a level of insanity as far as reducing the amount of water I was using. Realistic people wouldn't have such an option, and my hope is that this actually pays off. You have a totally censored game, which I suspect is censored and was always censored. I suspect this is an AI thing. Let's see, yeah. They did use AI for something here. But yeah, this is already mixed reviewed, isn't it? It's pretty, that's a shame. I'm gonna leave it on the follow, but I'm not gonna make a YouTube short on it. Although in fairness, I keep saying I'm making YouTube shorts and I'm not really making YouTube shorts on them. That's something I need to get back to and probably put some programming into. I am surprised that playing Resident Evil 2 Remake on my old computer really feels perfectly fine, perfectly acceptable. Like, there's one shadow setting that I turned down from the highest setting, and I'm running at 1080p, but even on my new computer, it still doesn't make any sense to try and run at 4K and record that and put it on YouTube. It's just too big of files, and my internet's not fast enough. And while I'd like to embrace HDR, most games don't embrace HDR. So yeah, my new computer will almost certainly be helpful for newer games and stay around as being useful for newer games, but yeah, my old computer is still pretty good too. Then you are in a weird position where, well, I'm in a weird position where I would be very hard pressed to try and sell my old computer. Might be nice, but I would probably not be able to do it. Although in this case, selling this computer might be a nice move. This too is mixed. Wow, we're getting more and more mixed things. Should also think about doing faultless cleanup in some way. Still have a ton of projects to work on. ton of stuff to do and still have to prioritize things. So I have this ever-growing long list of things I want to do, and then they get pushed down as I try to be more practical and do things that could actually help me, particularly financially. Like, me fixing code is not gonna pay for itself. Dark Mexico. You know, this is weird that it's a sword fighter, laser sword fighter, but we have never seen a game where you play as a Mexican conquistador or matador against a bull. That is interesting. Dark Sexium. It sounds, looks like it might be an adult game. Or maybe it was at one time. Yeah, playing as a matador against a bull might be an interesting game. Feels like something you would do in VR, potentially. This is just a mobile game. But yeah, I could see something happening there. This is a weird looking point and click game. I love those. I feel like you get to dress up as a matador in Costume Quest 2. So there might be some costumes like that. But I don't know of anyone where you actually fight a bull. Although, it would be an interesting action scene for any kind of Indiana Jones type game where it's the running of the bulls and you get chased, or a bull gets loose and you get chased. Although I don't know if the bulls really would even chase you if they weren't being poked and prodded like they are in Coliseums and they do the bullfights. Language is this? Chinese? I was expecting something more like Thai. Let's see if that's anything. One of the problems I'm running into as far as cleaning and decluttering is I'm disassembling a bed, but it's a medical bed that's really heavy, which apparently, being a medical bed repairman is a career path that is pretty good. I just saw on Reddit. But yeah, trying to disassemble it means getting down lower on the ground, and that in itself is often difficult for me. And yeah, it's just really heavy even in its smallest subdivisions and parts. So I really don't have a great place to put it. I have a general idea of where I'd want to put it, but that is in the at the end of the day. And part of the problem there is if I store it disassembled in a location where it would also be nice if it was assembled, it's not just an inflatable mattress where within an hour, 30 minutes, you would have a bed. It's probably an all-day affair, at least, to assemble it back together. Yeah. Look at this Miss Peacock. I don't think that has anything to do with Clue. We'll do some faultless cleanup looking at this, but this system is nowhere as good. Psycho, we'll look at that game. Yeah, just about the time I thought I was starting to make decent amount of progress as far as cleaning and decluttering. It really just reveals itself that there's something else that needs to be done, that there's more to be done, and I am not anywhere as close as I would have really wanted to be. I still mostly have a big problem of just not having extra free space, and that is complicating it quite a bit, certainly. So this game came out January 8th, 2026, called Psycho. It in no way looks interesting, really, to me. I must have been particularly generous to put it on the fall list. Now I will take it off the fall list. It does feel like we're looking at less games in the past couple streams, just less games coming out on Steam overall. This Peacock came out February 7th, so it still deserves a chance. And that is just going to be the end of the show. Now, I was told that, and I knew this was happening, but I didn't really think about it too much to try and fix it, that at the end of these streams, it's getting cut off by YouTube, and I have no reason to really understand why that is the case. So, I'm going to end this stream, and then the recording will end, and then I'm going to wait in silence for like a minute before ending the stream so it doesn't cut me off. I don't know why this is happening. It sucks, to say the least, but it is happening. I'm trying to open a stopwatch. Alright, so that's going to be it for the stream. We really didn't spend that much time going through games at all. Yeah, that is weird. But yeah, it's not like I got a ton of tabs still open either. Yep, that's it for the stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and keep on watching. Thanks.